Our skies are full of mysteries. Unidentified flying objects secretly investigated by government agencies all over Europe for decades.
There has been, and indeed still is, I think, great secrecy about UFOs and also a reluctance to talk about this subject.
For the first time, we've collated sightings and reports from across an entire continent.
We have to get to the truth, because the public have a right to know about these things.
Some experts insist many sightings have rational explanations.
Often you can take even the most spectacular UFO sighting and find that behind it is a very earthly explanation.
But some continue to defy understanding.
That's an object that flies, and I don't know what it is.
Are these visitors from other worlds or natural phenomena? And do our European governments know more than they ever reveal to us? The answers may lie in the untold stories of the UFO files of Europe. For decades, governments across Europe have been keeping files on UFO sightings. To this day, many of these cases remain unexplained. A UFO incident investigated by police as a criminal assault. A pilot's close encounter at 2,000 feet. And a Norwegian valley where mysterious aerial phenomena have been appearing for almost a century. 9th of November, 1979, Livingston, Scotland. 10:30 a.m. In a lonely Scottish woodland, 61-year-old forestry worker Bob Taylor has an astonishing encounter.
He's looking at the sky, and there in front of him was this massive, big dome-shaped object.
Smaller balls rolled towards him.
These objects were shaped like sea mines with about 6 legs attached.
This is the only British UFO incident ever investigated by the police as a criminal assault.
I really do think this case, even though it's got a single witness, is one of the really inexplicable incidents.
It's just so unlike my dad to talk about spaceships or anything like that.
He was completely honest and without any motive to make up such a story.
Malcolm Robinson is a UFO investigator who has long been intrigued by the Livingston case.
As a researcher, we have to get to the truth, because the public have a right to know about these things.
The encounter happened just 1 mile from Bob Taylor's home. He has since died, but UFO investigator Robinson has worked with his family to piece together what happened that day. He is retracing the steps that Taylor took in his local woods.
This is the area where Robert Taylor was walking down that morning. And it wasn't until he approached this clearing that he stood transfixed when he saw something which totally bemused him. He's looking at the sky, and there in front of him was this massive, big dome-shaped object. And he's standing there. He's absolutely bemused at what he's looking at. And then suddenly, what resembled 2 Second World War sea mines dropped very, very forcibly from the underside of this hovering object and hit the ground. And they started rolling across the grass. And they started to project these rod-like projections from these spherical balls towards his person and grabbed him very, very forcibly at his hips and pulled him right down. And it was at this point that he's had this terrible smell pervading the whole area, burning, burning smell all over this location here. And then just then, he lost consciousness.
Regaining consciousness some 20 minutes later, Taylor found the object had disappeared. He staggered back to his home.
His wife could see immediately that something had happened to him. She eventually pressed out of him that he'd been assaulted by aliens. She decided that he should go to hospital.
Taylor's daughter is working in the pharmacy department at Bangor Hospital as her father is brought in.
I had a phone call down from A&E to tell me my dad had been taken in, and the first person I met was my mum, who was saying, "Oh, I think your dad's had an awful bang in the head because he's talking about spaceships."
Taylor has cuts to his legs and seems confused.
It looked as if someone had used a rotating disc, a grinder or something, to grind through his trousers where his hips were. Not something that you can easily imagine could happen in any normal way. And also a mark under his chin, about 1 inch square, appeared to have been grazed.
Because of the forester's injuries, the police launch a criminal investigation. The British National Archive UFO researcher Dave Clark has seen the statement Bob Taylor made to the police at the time.
I've got some extracts from the police CID report on the Livingston incident here, and in the report is a police statement that was taken from Bob Taylor himself immediately after the incident, and it's always good to look at the contemporaneous statements that people make to the police in these instances. And he says that the object he saw was about 30 feet in height. It was grey in colour, although I got the impression that the top of the dome-shaped object changed from grey to translucent continually.
Following his statement, Taylor's torn trousers are sent away for forensic analysis.
Detectives were there taking samples and photographs, and this was a full investigation by the Criminal Investigation Department.
The next piece of evidence is found by police in the woods at the scene of the sighting.
The police went to the site and they found a series of mysterious marks on the ground, almost like some kind of vehicle with a caterpillar track had been driving backwards and forwards over the grass in this clearing.
The police made an official sketch as evidence of the marks they had seen.
They indicated that an object of several tons had stood there, but there was nothing to show it had been driven or towed away. There was no rational explanation for these marks. They couldn't find any obvious explanation as to what had caused them.
Some of the grass within the confines of these marks was sheared off. The tops of the grass stalks, if you like, had been sheared off and lying within the very framework of the holes in the grass. And it was perplexing because it's very, very rare that you come across physical evidence.
But in 2012, 33 years after the event, comes a startling revelation from Bob Taylor's son-in-law. David Hammond now believes that a sketch he created may have misled people about whether the UFO had legs.
Following the incident, I'd spoken to Bob and had done some freehand sketches of what he'd described. Went through it with him quite a few times and tried to press him for detail. This is a photograph of Bob shortly after the event, and he's holding the original sketch that I did, which was later developed into a more finished drawing, which is this one here. And this pretty accurately represents what he described to me. I had suggested to Bob that this object, which he'd said was in the air, and the marks on the ground must have been connected in some way. He agreed with me, but afterwards I'd realised that I had had led him to that. It wasn't something that he'd offered, and so I felt slightly guilty about it.
If the legs in the UFO picture are products of the artist's imagination, could there be a far more rational explanation for the marks in the forest?
It's quite possible that those marks were there on the ground before this incident actually happened. So maybe there had been some four-wheel drive vehicle there of some description that had left those marks. Bob Taylor had come along, had this experience, whatever the source of it was, and there's no obvious connection between the two things. So they don't really prove that there was an alien spacecraft or something extraordinary there. They just add to the overall mystery.
So, had Bob Taylor really seen something? Or might he have suffered a fit or hallucination?
A year before this encounter, Bob Taylor had suffered a series of inexplicable headaches for which he'd gone to his doctor and received treatment, and they'd never got to the bottom of what was causing it.